Mini episode 1269 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the FDH Lounge. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris here with you, and I have fellow original dignitary in the FDH Lounge, Chris Galloway here. This is part 3 of our NFL 2020 preview, going division by division. We are looking right here at the AFC South, and I will refer everyone back at the beginning of part 1, where we did the AFC East, roughly about the first 10 minutes or so. We looked at the macro level issues for COVID-19 in the NFL this year and how it's likely to affect the season. We are not going to do that on a division-by-division basis. We will look at it where it affects teams. We spent a decent amount of time looking at how it affects the Cleveland Browns in part 2 of our segment because they appear to be one of the teams most affected by it. And again, we come to the AFC South, which I just said off-air to you, Chris, always seems like a grab bag. I've done a number of these segments in recent years. The predominant number of segments I've done in recent years has been with you on looking at division by division. And the AFC South coming in, this is one of the divisions in football where a lot of people squint and look at it and see different things. It's sort of like looking at clouds. And I think it's very likely you and I may see this differently. We saw the first two divisions, the East and the North, almost exactly the same way. But the AFC South, there never seems to be chalk, and I think this year is no different.
No different, and it sounds like we're going to disagree a little bit on this. Although our worldviews tend to align more than they don't. Interesting you say it's a grab bag, but the reality of this grab bag is that the Houston Texans, for as critical as I am of Bill Bryan, they've won the AFC South in 4 of the last 5 years. So that is clearly a testament to Deshaun Watson being a outstanding quarterback and a guy I know that you loved coming out of Clemson and that you were 100% spot on about. But yeah, I mean, clearly there's teams that there are good rosters up and down this division. There's holes on every roster. I mean, unless you're the Jaguars, and I'm just, they're in the basement. Forget about them. Let's not even, they're not play here. But when you look at the Texans, and you look at the Colts, and you look at the Titans, you look at the fact that the Titans got to the AFC Championship game, and played pretty well in it. It's not like, they had chances in the game. You look at this division, if any one of those 3 teams wins it, I wouldn't walk away being surprised.
That is possible for any of the 3 to win it, although I'm certainly more down on one of the 3 than the other 2. Let's just, this goes against custom here, but let's just get Jacksonville out of the way. They're the clear division basement team in our estimation. I got them at 2-14. They're clearly tanking, trying to get Trevor Lawrence. And so, again, I just don't see where it's even worth even talking about with them. The irony is, and I've joked about this before on the show, Tony Khan, okay, as the executive producer for AEW Wrestling on Wednesday nights on TNT, Tony Khan, chef's kiss as a booker, okay? I love watching AEW. It's a great show. Chris Jericho has never been more entertaining. Jon Moxley, on and on and on. But maybe that's what the Khan family should stick to vis-a-vis sports entertainment as opposed to the ownership of the Jaguars, because it is just ass right now, basically. There's nothing else to say about it. They're not trying for this year, so why should we spend any time on them? I guess I'll do, what do you have to say about it, Chris?
Well, they're not going to be very good, and I have them miss 3-13, and Minshew was a guy I actually liked coming out of college, but I wanted the Browns to get late in the draft to back up Baker Mayfield. I think they're going to roll another year with him and see what they've got. give him the reins fully and just say, I don't think he's a great future starting quarterback, but he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be a very good backup / starter from time to time. He's very, I think he's going to have a very Fitzpatrick-like career. I think that, look, they just traded last night Galloway, right? They just traded him to the Vikings. So they are clearly in full tank mode. They're getting rid of good players all over the place. They shipped them off. To your point, let's not spend another second on them. They're not a good team. They're not going to be a good team. To think that they were just minutes away from going to a Super Bowl with Blake Bortles, and a couple years later, this is where we are. It's really sad for Jaguar fans.
Yeah, life comes at you fast. And again, for the Jaguars, again, they are still at an early stage, sadly enough, even as bad as they've been, at the early stage of what their rebuild is going to be. And rebuild is, I guess, optimistic. That's if you think they can pull it off. And time will tell.
There's not a team that's going to be more accustomed to playing in front of an empty stadium.
That's
socially
right.
distant stadium than the Jaguars. Maybe other than like the Chargers.
That's right. That's right.
Playing in front of the Chargers had to play every game in front of the opposing fans last year. There's no team better accustomed to an empty stadium than Jacksonville. So maybe there'll be some weird advantage there. Who knows?
Well, yeah, exactly. And the most entertaining thing that's happened in that stadium the last couple of years was the Stadium Stampede match on the AEW pay-per-view back in January, where, among other things, somebody got tossed into the pool there. But that is, by the way, and for what it's worth, Daly's Place, the amphitheater that is adjoining there, which they've been doing all the filming from, that has become one of my favorite all-time places to watch wrestling at. That is an amazing venue for being able to watch stuff. But that's the only good thing I can say about Jacksonville and the Khan family these days is what they're doing with the pro graphs, because the pro football part of it sucks. Moving from there, I'm gonna move up to what I'd say is the next team in the division. I got them at 6-10. I hear everything you're saying about what Houston's been able to do the last couple of years. And again, Deshaun Watson carrying them there. To quote one of the great figures in 21st century entertainment, of course, that would be Ricky from Trailer Park Boys. A toe to so on that one. I wanted Deshaun Watson for the Browns. Again, I ain't mad. They got Baker Mayfield, and maybe that'll still work out. But Deshaun Watson's a guy that I desperately wanted, and that I was mad that the Browns passed on. When I was hearing crap from some of my friends like hand size and miles per hour, I'd never even heard of the radar gun being used. And some of my smart mark friends started quoting that kind of crap at me, instead of just watching a film of what this guy did at Clemson. Deshaun Watson can do magic, but you got to have players around you to work with. And I think this is where it catches up for good old B.O.B., Bill O'Brien, who I've said previously, don't like him as a coach. As a GM, he's one of the all-time worst. And he's basically wearing that hat as well. J.J. Watt, when healthy, can be a real force on that defense, but when healthy is the key part of it here. I'm going to, maybe some people would consider this going out on a limb, and this is more of going out on a limb than any of the picks I've made thus far, but this is the year that it crumbles for the Texans. I got them 6-10.
I don't have them in third place in the division. I actually have them still winning the division, but it's not like I'm sitting here hanging my hat on them going, they're going to be great. I have them winning the tiebreak of them, the Colts, and Tennessee, all at 8-8. I think that these three teams are so similar. They all have big holes, but the Texans still have Watson. They still have a guy that can win you games because he's so dynamic. And this is another, O'Brien is one of these coaches that's benefiting from having a great quarterback. And he just keeps putting, garbage around him. They have talent, though. And there's talent on this team on both sides of the ball. But it's not what it was. They've given a lot of the talent away for crumbs.
Right.
And to your point, I think it catches up with them. I don't think it catches up with them enough to be 6-10. I've got them at 8-8 and winning the tiebreak and once again winning the AFC South. But they're definitely taking a step back. So in that regard, you and I are on the same page.
Right.
But I think that the quarterback is still the most critical position, and that's why I still have them number one versus having the Colts at number. I've got them again also tied at second, third position. Again, great roster, but I have real questions at quarterback.
This is the closest I've seen to anybody replicating my gimmick. I think it was 2017 when I picked all four teams in the NFC East at 8-8, and I picked Philly to win the division on a tiebreaker. So the year they won the Super Bowl, I picked them to win the division, albeit at 8-8. But so you're coming close to that right here.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Jacksonville. I look at the Texans, Colts, and Tennessee. It's all very similar. Strengths on their rosters, weaknesses on their rosters, question marks. All three of them, it's harder to differentiate. And when I can't, I'm just tossing the 8-8 dice on the table and going, all right, there we go. And one of them's going to win a tiebreak. I'll go Texans for 5 out of 6 years.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I got Tennessee next up in there at 9-7 and taking a wild card, and essentially, I guess you would say, having a season much like what they did a year ago. There are people who are looking for more out of them than what they did a year ago, but it remains to be sustainable, or to be seen if it's sustainable for Ryan Tannehill there. As a longtime Fish fan, maybe he's figured it out, but you could forgive me for being a little bit skeptical in that regard. But and again, Derrick Henry getting the contract that he got, is that a little bit... I don't think it's quite the Albert Pujols contract, but Derrick Henry's got a decent amount of miles on him in just a couple of seasons here, so I don't think that catches up to him yet in 2020. I think he is still going to be a strong and relatively dominant running back here, and this is a team that, unlike Houston, I don't think they have a lot of holes. Houston is a team that strikes me. I mean, Clowney used to be there, Hopkins... They were always a team that was a little bit top-heavy in terms of star talent, but I think now what they are is Miami before the rebuild, Detroit before they completely went in the crapper. We used to talk about this when Kyle Ross and I were doing the previews years ago. We'd talk about teams with the stars and scrubs rosters, and I think that's what Houston is getting towards. They have a handful of star talent guys and a lot of scrubs at other positions. The thing about Tennessee is they're just more sort of consistent across the board. But, I mean, it's so weird. Going back to, like, the Jeff Fisher era, I mean, that's one of the most consistent identities in the NFL, I don't think. I don't think Tennessee's ever had... They have some players. They've had some over the years that have been among the best in the league. But they tend to have more of a consistent roster than most teams do. And I see that being the case again this year.
Yeah, I think consistent is definitely the situation with them. The consistent coaching. They've both done a nice job. I don't believe in Tannehill. I saw a guy who did a nice job of scheming around him. He was not asked to carry that team last year, and now it's all on his shoulders to be the guy that everybody, Miami thought he was going to be. And I don't have any faith in that at this point. He hasn't shown me anything, even last year, that says, yeah, this is the guy. Like, they've turned it around. They've got the quarterback in the future, and this is, he's going to carry this team to victory. And this is still a quarterback league. And that's why, despite the fact that overall their roster is better than the Texans, certainly their run game, they have lost some guys, losing Logan Ryan and losing Jack Conklin and, some others that they've shipped off in the offseason to work through salary cap issues. They've lost some players that are not going to be easily replaceable, in my opinion. They don't have a lot of great talent at the wide receiver position. The reason I've got them at 8-8 and not like a 7-9, because again, I don't believe in Tannehill. They have the second easiest schedule in the league this year.
Yeah.
I mean, a team that wins the AFC Championship has the second easiest schedule, again, based on their opponent's 2019 record. That, to me, gets them, again, 8-8, competitive, competing for a wild card. They're in it to the end. It's classic Titans, Oilers, right? 8-8. Like,
right, yeah.
They're going to win some games like, over Baltimore where you go, whoa, and then they're going to lose some where you go, how did they just lose to Jacksonville?
Right.
One of Jacksonville's 3 wins. That's how I see the Titans. They go, again, a little bit better roster overall, but I don't believe in the quarterback, and they have the easy schedule, so that, that I think, again, I'm penciling them in at 8-8.
Right. I mean, I don't think there's been a city in America over the last 20 years, more so than Nashville, that's had sports radio talk in December like, this is what we got to do to make the playoffs. And I think that's what it's going to be again in December, is looking at that. And I think, like they have a lot of those seasons, I think they will just kind of sneak in and make it as they kind of did last year, thus setting up the mammoth upset over Baltimore. So again, once you get in, you have the opportunity to make things happen. We come now to my AFC South champions for 2020, which I know we disagree on. And I know from what you had alluded to previously, your thoughts on Phillip Rivers. What I come back to is, and again, I know the kind of year he had last year, and maybe I'm oversimplifying, but I will say this, that my regard for Frank Reich, I think he is one of the great offensive geniuses in the game at this point. And if he thinks Phillip Rivers is, at this stage, even with what he still has left, is a step up from Jacoby Brissett, who am I to argue with Frank Reich? I got them at 10-6. I got them winning the division, and I got them taking that step there. This has been, and again, they've had great coaching defensively the last couple of years as well. This is one of the great offensive lines in the game, led by Quentin Nelson. I see this as being a roster that can really take a step forward. I think Jonathan Taylor is somebody that's going to fit very well in that offense. I like what the Colts are doing. I think Phillip Rivers gives them just enough to be able to get them to win the division.
I love where the Colts are going with their roster. I think they have the best roster in the division, other than a quarterback. And again, it's a quarterback league. I think Jonathan Taylor is a great pick. They finally get that running back they need. But I watched Phillip Rivers the last 2 years, and especially last year. Obviously more so, and that's the most recent. He was awful. I mean, he was terrible. He couldn't complete passes. He was not accurate. He was slow. He can't move in the pocket the way he used to. And that Chargers team, it's not like you're like, I'm not even the quarterback on a not very good, talented roster. That's a good roster. I'm sorry, but I lay the Chargers' failures last year squarely in his feet. And I think there's way too much historical bias when it comes to him right now with analysts giving him this weird benefit of the doubt of going like, wow, he's going to be, he'll return to the norm. He's old, all right? I mean, other than like Tom Brady's having a nice glide down, most of these guys fall off the cliff. And I watched last year, and I just kept thinking, watching Phillip Rivers last year, this guy's off the cliff. He's flown off the cliff. And look, when you hit 40, it's happens, man.
Right.
I don't blame him. In my opinion, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback in terms of his numbers. I mean, he's been an outstanding quarterback for so long. But I watched him last year on a Chargers team that had a lot of talent. That was a good team, and they were. I believe that they didn't go anywhere because Phillip Rivers in a quarterback league is washed up. Phillip Rivers is not the quarterback that he was. My opinion is until he shows me something different, and I'm basing it on last year on a good Chargers team, I think he's washed up. I think he's done, and I think hiring by the Colts signing him was like wishful thinking. Like, let's see if we can squeeze the last bit of juice out of Phillip Rivers for 1 year and see what we can get out of him. I think there's a reason he already has his job coaching a high school team next year already lined up. He's done. And that's why, despite having the best roster in the division, in my opinion, and a great coach in Frank Reich, I've got them at 8-8 because I don't think Phillip Rivers is going to be able to get it done for them this year, despite the strengths that team has.
Well, I could see that being the case. So that's the thing. I guess I just like to put it to you then. What do you think Frank Reich saw when he was breaking down film that would make him say, this is our upgrade for Jacoby Brissett?
I think Frank Reich is falling into veteran quarterback bias, veterans that he knows. And he knows Brissett he has a low ceiling. He's maxed that ceiling out. And I think he's willing to, this year, take a shot that he can get an experienced veteran. There's no doubt that the guy's a leader. Phillip Rivers is a leader. His teammates will love him, right?
Right.
So you're going to have a leader. You're going to have a guy with experience. Frank's going to love all that stuff. And I think it's clear that, beefing up the defensive side of the ball and getting a guy like Jonathan Taylor, they're going to try to not ask Phillips too much. So I think that's what they're thinking. I think they looked out there and they're like, we've got to try to find something better, and they're rolling the dice that they can get one more year out of Phillip Rivers and hope that last year was some sort of an aberration.
Okay.
I just don't believe it. What I witnessed last year was a guy falling off the cliff. Now look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he bounces back and has a great year. How often do you see that at that age where they're terrible, then they suddenly come right back and like, wow, he did a 180. Because if they get the Frank Reich from last year, 8-8 is going to be a stretch.
Yeah. Well, that's a thing where, again, I just see him being able to manage the roster well enough to be able to get through it. Game manager Phillip Rivers, I guess you would say, because of the talent on the roster to be able to get them at that point. But it will be very, very fascinating to see how this thing plays out here. Again, this division, as we said, always one of the biggest grab bags in football, and this year looks no different.
No different. It's a bunch of middle-of-the-road, competitive football teams that some weeks you're going to go, wow, they've got a chance, and then the next week you go, wow, what's wrong with them? I think, again, to recap, the rosters are all similar in terms of I think in terms of not where their strengths and weaknesses are matching up, but I mean, they're similar in terms of quality of rosters. And, again, I'm going to lean on giving this slight edge to the Texans because your boy Deshaun Watson in a quarterback-centric league. Yeah,
well, my boy Deshaun Watson has really proven me right through the course of his career, so we'll have to see if he can prove me wrong this year and not be dragged down by the muck that he is surrounded by, not least of which his own coach, Bill O'Brien. But I suppose that's enough Bill O'Brien bashing for me in one segment here. But again, thank you, Chris.
Can you ever have enough Bill O'Brien bashing? I mean, I feel like we really went light on him.
Well, we really do. And who better to mention this with you? By the transitive properties of to be the man, you got to beat the man. I still feel that Bill O'Brien should take his 2012 Big Ten Coach of the Year award and give it to Frank Solich because we went into Happy Valley and beat them.
That's right.
By
those same properties, Frank Solich is a better NFL coach than Bill O'Brien.
Frank Solich with his little toe could be a better NFL coach than Bill O'Brien. I mean, this is not setting the bar high.
I think Bill O'Brien is actually a better coach than he is a GM because he is a dreadful GM.
Yeah.
And the Texans, shame on them for basically consolidating all power into this guy. It's like, what are you doing? He shows you again and again that he's not good at it, and the Texans, instead of taking away his authority and adding new layers, they keep doubling and tripling down on like, hey, Bill, you want to be the OC, you want to be the coach, you want to be the GM. Bill, you know what? Why don't you be the head of ticket sales? You know what? I think you want to be the head of buildings and grounds at the training facility. I mean, honestly, it's just idiotic how much authority and power they put in the guy who's shown he cannot handle it.
It is, yeah. I mean, and the Bill O'Brien's so bad as a GM that could replace the Yo Mama genre of jokes out there. As far as people making comparisons and So yeah, so I think we're making up for lost time here at the end, getting enough Bill O'Brien bashing in here to be able to make it worth it. So now that we've hit our
okay,
quota,
now I feel better about our review of this division. It should begin and end with bashing Bill O'Brien.
it should.
Thank you.
It should. Even if we didn't have enough in the middle, we made up for it on either end. So on, on that note, thank you, Chris, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this mini episode. Up next, we break down the 2020 AFC North.